would say the task of a CEO is to drive the strategy, the vision, inspire. Everybody else will manage the process. It calls on emotional intelligence. There's a lot of information you've got to filter, process, and then be decisive. In an environment of uncertainty, you have to be quick with those decisions, and you have to be right with those decisions. How do you do it?
Look, I have a great team. I have again, big companies, I could tell you all the processes that we have and the way we try to manage the company with formal disciplines and things like this. But in the end, big companies work as much on trust as they do on any other dimension. So we've got a great team. We discuss things frequently. We always have kind of a game board of ideas, contingencies, things like that we're constantly discussing. And then I think what we can do in a moment of uncertainty, right? So here's what the advantage I have that most companies don't have. One is we can invest into difficult situations. So if you look at Europe today, Europe's out of favor. Europe's as out of favor as any region can be. People are worried about economic growth, they're worried about governance, they're worried about the euro, they're worried about everything. But if you can step into Europe today and you can do products that can be exported from Europe, right? And you can invest in good workforces that are globally competitive. This is the perfect moment in time to invest in Europe. And so that's, when you run a company like GE, you can take advantage of contrarian situations all the time because you can play for the long term. Another advantage I have is I've got a portfolio. So, as you said, I took over GE the day before 9/11. If you were in GE when this tragedy happened and you owned 1,200 commercial aircraft and you had this huge commercial engine portfolio, that was a bad day. That was a very tough time. But over the subsequent decade, we're 10 points of market share higher today than we were at that moment in time. Because the power business, GE Capital, GE Healthcare, they funded our aviation business during the tough days. So I sit here today with $120 billion. Now, believe me, there's no business cooler to be in the commercial aviation. So now, 12 or 13 years later, the oil and gas industry isn't as good. But we like the oil and gas industry. So we have the latitude to invest when nobody else is investing and be able to play it for the long term. And then the third thing we can do in volatile times is we can pull together what I would call horizontal solutions. Mm-hmm. We can bring a product, financing, services all together at the same place at the same time. And that's a massive advantage right now because one of the first things that disappears is financing. Yeah. So if we can be our own banker, if we can bring together horizontal solutions, we've prepared our company to be better than others when markets are volatile. And that's, I think, a strength.
And you've just alluded to the fact that you can do it because you've got a wide portfolio and deep pockets. What about somebody who leads a company that doesn't?
Look, I think if you're not, the best thing you can do is know what you're best at, know what you value the most, and hang on to it. In other words, where companies get in trouble, economy cycle. The rand is going to be strong or weak. The South African economy is going to grow by 1% or 2% or 3%. I don't recognize everybody in the room, but my hunch is that nobody in this room can do one thing about any of those things. In other words, you're participants in this economy. You're not the ones that are going to shape what the price of oil is or what the strength of the rand is or things like that. But what you have to know is, what am I willing to die for? What am I willing to do whatever it takes to protect? What is my team best at, and what can they do? And that's what serves you well when markets cycle. When companies get in bad trouble, right? It's when they're doing things they have no context for, or taking risks that they have no assumption about, right? So if you look at people doing in the financial crisis, people were writing bond insurance, right? And most days on that bond insurance, they would earn like 25 cents. Except the day you were wrong, you lost $30 billion. And so people happily walking down the street, 20, give me a nickel, 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 lose 30 billion. That's how people get in trouble, is by not knowing what they're good at and taking risks that are so outsized versus the reward. It's ridiculous. I look at Nigeria today. Nigeria is long in oil and natural gas. They have a 40 gigawatt deficit in electricity. And everywhere in between is hard, right? You worry about governance, you worry about financing, you worry about safety, things like that. But if we're right in Nigeria, we're going to do great. And if we're wrong, we're only going to be wrong by an acceptable limit inside a company our size. So in a slow growth world, you know, when I talk to the GE team, I tell the GE team, we have to win in Africa, right? I mean, even the day I became CEO, GE used to segment the world, US, Japan, Europe, and ROW, rest of world. And if we ever got an order in South Africa, we would hit our knees and say, thank you, God, this was a miracle. We sold a gas turbine today in South Africa. Who did it? I don't know. But, you know, now I say to the team, if we aren't dominant in Africa, if we don't win every order in Africa, we're going to lose. Because Europe's not going to grow that fast. Yeah. Japan's not going to grow that fast. US is not going to grow that fast. So the whole dimension of running a global business, these places South Africa used to be optional. Now it's mandatory.
Let's contextualize the degree of uncertainty that exists out there, because there was a time when they said decoupling, Africa wouldn't be affected, and we find that actually it is. So give us a perspective. You've said a lot about Europe today. It's a big unknown. The economies are weak. It might be imploding after the Greek election. ECB is introducing 60 billion euros worth of stimulus. The Europeans believe in the long term there'll be a recovery. You don't seem so optimistic.
Oh, look, I mean, I think Europe's important. Europe is a market of 500 or 600 million people. You know, the world is much better when Europe's doing well. I think there's always two things. One is, you know, we've gotten so used to what central bankers can do that we've gotten lazy as societies in terms of what everybody else's role is. You know, like I think the U.S. economy is doing well right now. And I think President Obama deserves credit for that in terms of where it goes. But when President Obama gives a speech, the State of the Union last week, and stock market opens at 9:30 the next morning, whatever he said has no impact on the stock market that day. A year or two ago, I was in my office. I had CNBC on. Ben Bernanke was testifying in front of Congress. The market's going up 200 points and down 200 points, paragraph by paragraph. You know, and you're just saying, should anybody be that powerful, right? If he burped, the market went up 50 points. And so, you know, I think actually Mario Draghi's done a great job. And he's a fantastic guy, a good leader, and willing to take the heat. But there also needs to be labor reforms, productivity reforms, investment in infrastructure. If you don't do all the things that drive competitiveness, ultimately you don't get growth. And so some of it is fiscal, but some of it is policy in terms of how do you drive competitiveness in society? How do you drive more productivity in society? And that ultimately is what's going to, I think, ultimately turn Europe into the kind of growth region it can be. Some of our GE's most productive plants are in Europe. Some of our very most productive plants are in Europe because the people are good, the ideas are good, the technology is good, and we're quite productive there.